What's going on, guys? Bobby Betts Fights back for another week of UFC breakdowns. This time we got Mateusz Gamrot facing off against Rafael Fiziev in a lightweight bout, which the winner is likely going to put himself in line for a title shot in about a fight or two. So a lot on the line there. We are back in the Apex, unfortunately, but should be a nice little card to go ahead and go through and pick some spots, see if we can win some money. As always, follow me on the socials. You got Bobby Betts Fights down in the left-hand corner on Twitter, on YouTube, and at betmma.tips. It's going to be Bobby Betts Fights. So some exciting news. We got our first sponsor. We have a sponsorship by Legit Snacks protein gummies. As you can see here, I got the green apple flavor, and I couldn't wait to dig into these bad boys. I ate the whole pack before I even got on the recording, but these things have got 17 grams of whey isolate protein, which is like the Ferrari of protein. All right. It doesn't get much better than whey isolate. 17 grams packed with protein. If you guys are like me and just want to eat after you lift, or you need a snack in the car ride back home before you can get your protein shake, these guys have got you covered. It's Legit Snacks, 3 different flavors: green apple, watermelon, strawberry, at Eat Legit Snacks on the socials, and you can buy them at www.eatlegitsnacks.com. We'll go ahead, and as always, let's go ahead and recap the last card, and then we'll go ahead and jump through these breakdowns. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, here we go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and pop down to UFC Fight Night, Grasso versus Shevchenko, a.k.a. UFC Noche. And, we're back in the red. And, like that tub thumping song, I get knocked down, but I get up again. And that's what we've been doing week after week. Something's going to right the ship. We keep making the right bets. But this one was a tough one to swallow. So let's go ahead and roll through these. So, Jasudavicius against Tracy Cortez. Tracy Cortez was just faster than her on the feet, and bad optics by Jasudavicius. You kept getting her head popped back. I mean, she had some success with the wrestling, but you could tell Cortez was landing the stronger shots. So pretty clear 30-27 in that one. So we lost a unit there. Kevin Holland versus Jack Della Maddalena had a sparring match. Again, I think bad optics by Kevin Holland, moving straight back, showing his back to Jack Della Maddalena in these rounds. He ended up losing the split decision. Could have went either way. So that was a tough one. But yeah, another unit down. Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko. It was a very close fight. A lot of people thought Valentina won. Personally, I think Grasso won the 4th, so the 10-8 in the 5th doesn't really matter, but that's besides the point. Mike Bell, 10-8 in the 5th round. We get a draw because of one scorecard being tied up, and the other 2, we had one going to Grasso and one going to Shevchenko. So we got a draw there. But yeah, it wasn't a 10-8 round. I think we can all agree on that, no matter what side you were on. Parlays, Kopylov won, Zellhuber won. Kopylov showing off that supreme striking, Frem showing that he is below average, and Zellhuber facing some early adversity against Giagos, getting rocked, but then come back in the second round and grab the submission. So hit on that parlay. That was the only bet we won, because Padilla against Kyle Nelson, who is just turning into the bane of my existence. Kyle Nelson. The book's out on Kyle Nelson. I say it all the time, but I really do think I got a read on him now. I mean, every time it's the same thing. He said in the press conference, my pressure. And then what did he do? He went out and he started jogging around the cage, around the outside with the high guard. He gives up the first round every time. And then in the second, he comes out throwing a little bit more, rocks his opponent. And the one thing I can say about Kyle Nelson is he's very good at knowing when he wins a round or when he's winning a round. So he can use that to just kind of taper off. Never's going to go in for the finish. It's always going to be a boring fight. It sucks. Literally, I was very angry watching that fight. He's just one of those guys that can lull you to sleep, do just enough, and even when he's got his opponent hurt, he's not going to go in for the kill. Sad day. It's a bad day when Kyle Nelson wins. Anyway, I'm going to keep betting against him just because I'm just that. I'm like, that's how big of just to spite him, honestly. And then we had 2 Hail Mary parlays. One had life going into the last leg. I mean, Chare should have won by sub. I don't know why we keep doing this instant replay and guys that complain. I mean, he went limp. That's your fault. You shouldn't, when the ref picks your arm up, you should give him the thumbs up. I don't care what anyone says. Anyway, that's besides the point. That's avoided bet. Zellhuber won by submission, so we hit that. Rosas Jr., Normally, a sub guy went out swinging. Mitchell fell and he ground and pounded him out, which was always a probability. I hedged a little bit off the track record, but that does not matter. All that matters is what we have on this website, and that's all we can go off of. So minus 2.36 units. We got a little bit of that back in Contender Series, but again, we don't do a breakdown for Contender Series, so it doesn't really matter. As it stands right now, we're at 9.91 units profit for the year, just 2% ROI. So still on the deep down slope, but we're still profitable. Just a little under $500 for the year. So let's go ahead and flip over. Did not mean to do that. Let's go ahead and flip over to the card and let's run through this one. Starting with the first fight we got, which is Tamiris Vidal versus Montserrat Rendon at women's bantamweight. I mean, Rondon's making her debut. I think she's 5-0. She's got 2 or 3 split decisions on her record, which really those fights could have gone either way. I don't think she won the one fight that I watched. I really was not impressed with her tape. I think she's got rudimentary stand-up. She's billed as a grappler. She never grapples in her fights, and that's primarily because she has bad wrestling. She goes in for bad shots, and she can never get her opponent to the ground, so she's forced to stand up with them. Tamiris Vidal, at least you know that she has some pop in her hands. She can time a knee, like we saw the last time out when she fought Ramona Pascal. And yeah, I mean, she's a good grappler as well. Her only loss, well, it's a win on her record because because against Eileen Perez, she actually got the win by DQ because Eileen Perez was throwing all these illegal strikes. But that really was the only time that I saw besides her other loss, which, I don't really put too much stock in. The Eileen Perez loss, you got to be an elite level grappler to beat Tamiris Vidal. Now, we don't know how her gas tank's going to look if, you're pushing the pace, and Rendon seems to not wilt as the fight goes on. But you look at these two and you just know that Tamiris Vidal has more skill on the feet. She's a lot more calm. Montserrat Rendon seems to be on the balls of her feet in and out. She keeps way too much distance. And then when she crashes into strikes, she can be pretty predictable. I wouldn't be surprised if Vidal caught her a couple of times in this fight. And if it goes to the ground, I like Tamiris Vidal over Montserrat Rendon all day long. I think Vidal can get the takedown. I don't think Rendon can take Vidal down. I think Vidal is going to be the one on top. I think Vidal is going to be the one dictating this fight. So I'm going to go with Tamiris Vidal in this one. Don't have a bet, though. She's a pretty heavy favorite at minus 220. Rendon's right around plus 185. But again, it's women's MMA. Anything can happen. So, betting a favorite at over 2-1 juice, just not. Don't love it. Don't love it. So Vidal's the pick. Don't have a play on it. Next fight, we got Hannah Goldie versus Mizuki Inoue. Mizuki's a pretty heavy favorite, as you can see. It's right around minus 310. Hannah Goldie plus 250. Another one, women's strawweight fight. Mizuki Inoue has fought a high level of competition. She's fought Alexa Grasso. She's fought Wu Yanan most recently, her last time out. And honestly, the only thing to worry about in this matchup with Inoue is ring rust, because the last time she fought was during COVID. And so it's been about 3 years. Maybe a little less than 3 years. So, she's coming off after a long extended layoff, but she's facing Hannah Goldie, and Hannah Goldie's 6-3. She has one UFC win, and she hasn't looked very impressive in those fights. I think she's very basic with her approach in all aspects of MMA. I think she has very basic striking. She's going to go in. She's going to be able to get clipped. She leaves herself wide open. She goes in, throws a flurry of punches. I'd say she's not technically strong in the clinch, but she's just a strong woman. She puts a lot into her strength training, as you can tell. I mean, she's short, stocky, but she's very strong. So, I mean, I guess you could say, like, against Diana Belbitia, she had some success holding her up against the cage. But again, I just don't think Hannah Goldie is primarily a UFC fighter. I think she's more of, the Instagram influencer type, and oh yeah, I got a UFC contract, so I'll go through a camp and fight because it's extra money in my pocket. I'm not saying she's in there not to win, but I don't think she's training full time. I think Mizuki has a good shot in this fight. I like her striking against Yanan. She's not afraid to go in. She was able to time some shots and really rock Yanan in that fight. And yeah, she just seems like a much more well-rounded fighter. I'm going to go with Mizuki in this one. I think she's got Goldie covered everywhere, but again, it's women's strawweight, and she's such a heavy favorite. I don't have a play on it. This next fight's an interesting one at heavyweight. We got Muhammad Usman facing off against Jake Collier. I'll go ahead and expand this one just so you can see what we're working with. So Muhammad Usman, coming off of the Ultimate Fighter win over Zach Pago, where he's able to knock him out cold with one punch. So he's got a ton of pop in his hands. Fairly undersized for a heavyweight. I think he tries to use that to his advantage because he's going to be in much better shape than his opponents. A little bit lighter, but a little bit more quicker. Kind of like the Chris Daukaus, Tanner Boser. Even though both those guys ended up at light heavyweight, that's where they had their success, was just being more agile than their opponents. So I think Muhammad Usman uses it that way. He can wrestle. You saw that in the Junior Tafa fight. Where Tafa was clipping him in the first round, was really hitting him with some heavy shots, but then he was able to drag him down, and he realized that he could do that. So he rinsed and repeat, ton of control time, ended up winning the fight despite not doing any damage whatsoever, like at all. So he's facing off against Jake Collier, who in my opinion has had a rough go at it in his last 3 fights. I think he won against Andrei Arlovsky. To be quite honest, I think he did more damage on the feet. Definitely more volume. I think his shots hurt Arlovsky more than Arlovsky's shots hurt him. And I was surprised that Arlovsky ended up getting the nod in that fight. Against Chris Barnett, he had him dead to rights. He dropped him, and then just for whatever reason, the ref let it play out, and Barnett was able to hang on by a thread, and Collier punched himself out. Barnett comes back, ends up getting the win because Collier's just too tired to move forward. And his next fight out, I don't know what the game plan was against Martin Boudet, but Martin Boudet, who is, in my opinion, is a pretty durable guy. Collier came into the fight trying to get him out in the first round, just guns a-blazing, just hitting him with everything, the kitchen sink. And again, he punched himself out. He didn't have anything left in the second or the third. Boudet withstood everything, and Boudet was able to take the decision. I hope he has a different game plan against Muhammad Usman. It seems like his game plan changes depending on who he's fighting, so I know there's some thinking going on there. But against Martin Boudet, I'm surprised that he tried to get him out of there so early. I mean, you like to see it. I love the aggression, but not a great game plan, especially when that was a very winnable fight, I thought, for Jake Collier. But anyway, in this fight, I like Jake Collier's chances. I think he can keep it on the feet. He definitely is going to throw more volume than Muhammad Usman, who's a very low volume fighter, and he's going to look for one big shot. Collier's been in there with enough heavyweights to know that he can get planted on one big shot, and I think his boxing's a lot better than Usman. He can mix in the kicks, and wrestling, I think he has enough wrestling to be able to match Usman. Now, the problem comes in with the gas tank in this fight. Can Jake Collier have enough in the tank to defend those takedowns in round 2 and then in round 3? I'm honestly not worried about Usman finishing Collier because I think Collier is going to start to best him on the feet, and I think it's going to be takedown after takedown after takedown, and it's going to be whether or not Collier can keep it on the feet and whether or not and if not, Usman's going to get the control, and if he gets a lot of control in these rounds, he's going to win them. So as long as Collier can have a balanced approach where he can keep his distance, he can keep it on the feet, he can work him in the clinch, just make it a dirty fight inside, and then just touch him with volume on the feet, I think he's got a good shot. So I'm going to go with Jake Collier in this fight, and I do have a play on him. I got him at plus 145. It's down to plus 114, plus 120, depending on what book you're at. If you like Muhammad Usman, you can get him at minus 135, minus 140 as the favorite. Next fight we got Jacob Malkoun versus Cody Brundage. I'm very low on Cody Brundage. I've always been very low on Cody Brundage. I think he has a lot of flaws in his game, and he doesn't do anything to fix them. Fighting out of Factory X, it seems like he just doesn't absorb any of their philosophies, even though I don't like Factory X all that much, to be honest with you. I think that their fighting style is great to win fights by decisions, but I don't think they have a lot of finishers in that gym, to be completely honest. There are a few, don't get me wrong, that are very entertaining, but just the Vink Pichel way of fighting, Vince Morales, I could rattle off a few more, but the Chris Gutierrez, just the kick and run is really what it is. But anyway, that's besides the point. In this fight, he's facing off Jacob Malkoun, who's a very good wrestler. His UFC debut, he was very green. He only had about 3 or 4 fights under his belt, and he got planted by Phil Halls, who has a ton of power in his hands. And he got planted early. Didn't have a chance to really ease himself into that fight. In this one, I think against Cody Brundage is dangerous early. Don't get me wrong. He's got a ton of pop in his hands. He floored Rodolfo Vieira. And in his fights, I mean, against Tresean Gore, he was touching him early. He's a very fast starter, but he fades. And when he faces any type of adversity, he doesn't know how to work out of it. I mean, against Cedric Dumas, I mean, Dumas pretty much had his way with him, and Brundage had nothing for him, really. In this one, he's coming back. He didn't really go back to the lab and really figure anything out. He's still the same old fighter. In this one, I really don't think he's going to be able to get to Malkoun early enough before Malkoun plants him on the ground. I think Malkoun's going to chain wrestle. Brundage is going to end up on his back. And if Cedric Dumas can hold you down round after round, Jacob Malkoun can absolutely hold you down round after round. And Brundage, he could, he jumps guillotine. That's his favorite move. If he does it again, wouldn't surprise me. Horrible decision on his part every time he does it. He did it against Rodolfo Vieira. And if he's willing to do it against Rodolfo Vieira, I bet you he thinks it can work against Jacob Malkoun. Rodolfo Vieira, his nickname is the Black Belt Hunter in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Cody Brundage thought he could guillotine like in a ADCC Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu like world champ. Nuts. So wouldn't be surprised if he jumped guillotine, ended up on his back. Malkoun pops up and just gets the control time for a win, mixes in the ground and pound, easy 30-27. So Malkoun's a blown-up favorite because of that. He's minus 575. On some books, he's close to minus 700. It's unplayable for me at those odds, but I do have him in a parlay. Got in early, right around minus 425 on Malkoun. I don't like the second leg of it all that much when I put it in, but I will track it because I am a man of my word. So Jacob Malkoun is a parlay piece for me against Brundage. Moving on, we got Tim Means facing off against Andre Fialho. Another interesting fight. I mean, Means, Dirty Bird, he's an old guy, 39 years old, but he's been around for a while. And, there's guys that are 39, in the UFC, they don't, there's a reason why they're around this long, right? They can still fight. Andre Fialho has had a rough go at it as of late. He came in real hot with some of these knockouts. He had a decent performance against Michel Pereira on short notice. And then, he had the knockout of Cameron Van Camp, which was a pretty vicious one. He had a knockout of Miguel Baeza. He was on a streak. And then the last couple of fights, he's just been knocked out himself. He's kill or be killed. That's the way he's always going to fight. And, against Muslim Salikov and, Joaquin Buckley and Jake Matthews, he was on the wrong side of it. I mean, Jake Matthews looked like a world beater in that fight, but against Salikov, he tired out in the second. And then against Joaquin Buckley, just got caught with a head kick. After one judge actually gave Fialho, I think 2 judges gave Fialho the first round, which I thought was bananas because he didn't throw nearly as much volume as Joaquin Buckley did, but Buckley ended up finishing that fight. So this one, he's facing off against Tim Means. The athleticism definitely goes to Fialho in this one. He's got good boxing. He's got good hands. Tim Means, on the other hand, is just a guy who could always eat a shot. You never know how long that's going to last, but at 39 years old, but he's withstood it up till this point. And they don't call him the Dirty Bird for nothing. I mean, he's going to want to get on the inside and make it an ugly fight. Fialho does have those uppercuts though, and he can definitely hit Tim Means with a lot of nasty shots. It's just going to be a matter of whether he can get him down, because I really do think he's KO or bust at this point. I don't see Fialho winning many decisions. I think he's going to throw everything that he has at Tim Means, and if he rocks him, he's going to go in for the kill. If Means can withstand it, I think the second and third rounds with Means' volume and just constantly being in his face is going to really get to Fialho. And he does not like that at all. I mean, he likes to be in close, but when he starts to gas, he does not. He doesn't like when you're suffocating him. And I think Tim Means can definitely have success in that area. If we look at the odds, Andre Fialho is a fairly heavy favorite, around minus 175. Tim Means at plus 145 as it stands right now. Slight line movement towards Means. But yeah, it's a tough one to call, really, because you can see the fight going, a couple of different ways. You got Fialho, the much younger guy, the much faster guy, the more athletic guy, could go out there and starch Tim Means early. But if the fight goes late, it's going to get really interesting. Potential fight of the night, actually, if it goes late. So, I'm going to go with Tim Means in this one. I really do like his scrappiness and his ability to stay in fights. And Andre Fialho, if I really do think unless he can get it out of there early, it's going to be, he's going to be drowning in deep waters in the second and the third with Tim Means. So I'm going to go with the Dirty Bird in this matchup. Don't have a play on it just yet. We will see as the time comes. So then we got Dan Argueta facing off against Miles Johns to round out the prelims. So if we take a look at this fight, I mean, Argueta and Miles Johns, they kind of cancel each other out with the wrestling. I mean, they both have decent wrestling. Miles Johns has very good takedown defense, and Argueta is going to just keep coming with the wrestling, and he has a motor on him. Miles Johns tends to wear out as the fight goes on. Saw that against John Castaneda, where he just didn't have much left in the tank in the second or the third. But Dan Argueta fights a lot different than John Castaneda. Castaneda keeps a good distance. Miles Johns constantly trying to crash the distance, gets caught with a couple of shots. Gas tank starts to fade a little bit, and then Castaneda takes over late, ends up getting the submission finish late after battering Miles Johns on the feet. Dan Argueta, he's going to be in your face the entire time. It's, strike to clinch to takedown, work the ground and pound, try to get to the back, get a rear naked choke. It's going to be interesting if they're on the feet for extended periods of times, and it's going to really come down to Dan Argueta's motor, really, because if he starts to fade, Miles Johns could easily take over, and on the feet, Miles Johns is a lot more comfortable than Dan Argueta, even though in his last fight out, believe he was fighting Vince Morales. It was a very low and slow kickboxing match that he ended up eking out a decision on. Really had no clue who was winning the fight. So I'm really interested to see if Miles Johns is going to be more aggressive against Dan Argueta, or if Dan Argueta is just going to come in and just suffocate him and drown him out. So when you look at it as far as like a path to victory, I think Miles Johns could definitely clip Dan Argueta with something, but Argueta's tough. He's battle tested, and I do think he is going to persevere in this matchup. I think when it boils down to it, I think Argueta's toughness, his cardio, his wrestling attack, and mixing it in with some nice dirty boxing is going to get the job done. So I'm going to go with Dan Argueta. He's the second leg of that parlay that I was talking about that I'm not too confident in, just because I don't like how good Miles Johns is at defending the takedown. He's very good, so it's going to stand on the feet, and that's when it's unknown. So hopefully Argueta, has enough gas in the tank. He's got that motor, and he can keep that running, and we can get the win on that. So we're going to go with Argueta to round out that parlay. That parlay, when I got it, I think I got Argueta at minus 185. So money's coming in on Johns. He's now minus 175. So we're looking at right around, minus 110, minus 108 odds, I believe, for that parlay. First fight on the main card, we got Ricardo Ramos versus Charles Jourdain. Ricardo Ramos is a guy who every time he gets a step up in competition, he kind of wilters. And every time he fights a step down, he does exactly what he's supposed to do. Highlight reel, finish, except for Journey Newsom, who fought that fight on short notice, and it was actually a fairly back and forth fight, but Ricardo Ramos clearly won that fight via decision. Charles Jourdain, on the other hand, has been in some tough scraps. Shane Burgos, he arguably 10-8'd him in that last round. I mean, Burgos wrestled him in the first and the second and won those two rounds, but Charles Jourdain did everything he could in the third and Burgos was not able to take him down in that round, and Charles Jourdain was just throwing everything in the kitchen sink at him. A good showing against Nathaniel Wood as well showed that he's really tough, and I value Nathaniel Wood very high in the featherweight division. I think he's a very good fighter, very well-rounded fighter, very good on the feet and very good on the ground. Charles Jourdain is always a tough fight for anyone, really. I think he gets a little wild, and he has had some holes in his game. Hopefully he's had some time to shore that up. In his interviews, he's always talking about how much more he's matured, and he showed that against Kron Gracie, where he didn't go into, he didn't go to the ground with him. He didn't do anything stupid. It was always, let's separate and let's strike because I have such a big advantage there, and he won that fight easily. Ricardo Ramos is a very good striker. I would say Jourdain is definitely, in my opinion, a level up from Ricardo Ramos. I think Ricardo Ramos, a lot of people see that flash with the spinning attacks, the spinning elbows, spinning back fists, but they don't really see the in-betweens where he doesn't throw a lot of volume. He has decent kicks, but really, he's been able to eke out some wins based on his fight IQ. Against Bill Algeo, the takedowns were Very prominent reason why he won that fight. But honestly, Bill Algeo hit him with a lot more shots than Ricardo Ramos hit him with. But it was just the takedowns and the control time that ended up getting him the win. And in this fight, honestly, I think that's his path to victory. I know a lot of people think we're going to get this stand-up war, but I think Ramos is going to be looking to take Jourdain down because Jourdain has showed that he can get taken down multiple times in his fights previously. I think he's going to have to mix it up. I don't think he's going to be able to hit Jourdain with any spinning stuff. He can touch. You'll be able to touch Jourdain. Jourdain does get hit, but Jourdain, there's a lot of volume. He's a lot more active on the feet than Ramos is. Sometimes it takes him a little bit to ease into the fight. So Ramos might have success in the first, but in the second and the third round, I really got to give it to Charles Jourdain. I really like his volume. I like the way he mixes and kicks, and I really think he's going to be able to take this one and avoid the big spinning attack from Ricardo Ramos. I think it's just going to be that lack of activity and probably a couple of failed takedowns later on in the fight that's really going to seal Ramos's fate. I think Jourdain can win this one by a late finish or a decision. As far as the odds are concerned, Jourdain's at -135, Ramos +114. So money's been coming in on Jourdain. So on some books, you'll probably see him at -140, -145. I got in with him at -135. For 1 unit. And forgot to throw this disclaimer out there. My unit size has decreased from $50 to $25, just because of the way the bankroll has been taking a hit. We got to be responsible, and we got to size down our unit size so we're not risking such a high percent of our bankroll. So it's going to be $25. So if you're looking at betmma.tips, you're going to see a lot of 0.5 units being put in just because I can't alter the unit size or else it's going to throw the numbers off. So I'm going to keep it at 50, but I'm just going to drop it down to half units. So all these times when I'm saying the units on this card, except for the parlay, which is actually 1 unit, $50 with Argetta and Malkoon, all the straight plays are going to be a half unit. So Charles Jourdain, a half unit on him at -135. Next fight, we got Brian Battle versus AJ Fletcher. Another interesting fight. I mean, if you take a look at it, Brian Battle has good volume. He's had a lot of finishes lately, but I really don't see him as much of a finishing threat in a lot of his fights. I mean, unless his opponent makes a very big mistake, Brian Battle is more going to be volume, pop you from the outside, and just look to fight off of his back foot. AJ Fletcher is an explosive guy. He's very small for welterweight, but he makes up for it with being explosive, being quick, and having those big actions and mixing in his takedowns and his wrestling because he is fairly strong on top. It really... In this one, it can go a couple of different ways, and it depends on who you like and who you value in this fight and what you value in this fight, because AJ Fletcher, the big knock on him in his fights is he gasses out late. Against Ange Lusa, he started off well, and then he faded in the second and faded in the third. Against Matt Semmelsberger, same thing. He started off really well in round one with the takedowns. He was attacking the neck, attacking the chokes, able to get back on top with the mounted guillotine, land some ground and pound. He looked great. Second round, Semmelsberger flipped the script halfway through the round, got on top, and then in the third, it was all Semmelsberger. So AJ Fletcher, the later the fight goes, the less he's got. So he really has to control that gas tank or do something about it, try to get a little bit better cardio in there. Brian Battle is a cardio machine. He's always going to be there in the third. He's a guy who can fight through adversity, very tough, but he leaves himself open on the feet. I don't think he's shored up the holes in his game. A lot of the fights, like his last 2 fights, I mean, you look at Takashi Sato and you look at Gabe Green, both of those fights ended so early that we really didn't learn that much about him. He landed a nice, kick that he hid behind a straight that dropped Sato, and then Gabe Green decided to come out and brawl with him and ended up getting clipped in a exchange where they were just throwing hooks back and forth. So I'm really interested to see if we can see Brian Battle in a fight that's extended, because the last time we saw that was against Tresean Gore, and Tresean Gore is type of fighter who kind of waits a lot, doesn't throw a lot of volume, and AJ Fletcher is going to be a lot more active than, say, a Tresean Gore. So we'll see how it pans out. In this fight, Brian Battle -185, AJ Fletcher +154, +160. He was down to +145. Money came in on him, so he's up to +160, a fairly big jump, actually. So If when I'm looking at this fight, really, I do think it's going to be a close one. I would take a look at AJ Fletcher's point spread if you want to be safe. Me, on the other hand, as always, going to go with the dog in this one with AJ Fletcher. I do have a bet on it. We'll call it a half unit for $25. Like I said, that's my new unit size. I think he's got a shot in this one. I think Brian Battle in that Renat Fakhretdinov fight, he got controlled on the ground a lot, and AJ Fletcher can definitely get him down and control him. He's just got to manage that gas tank, and he can't empty it early. If he can bank 2 rounds in the third, I don't think Battle's going to have what it takes to finish him late. And I think Fletcher can definitely win a decision in this one. As long as he doesn't put himself in some awkward position to get subbed, he's got a shot. So I'm going to take the shot at Fletcher. I got him at plus 170. So even with the line moving towards Battle, I got in early. So I'm still beating that line as it stands by a thread, albeit, but a win's a win, I guess, up until this point. Marina Rodriguez versus Michelle Waterson Gomez. These two have already fought, and there really isn't much to say about it. Marina Rodriguez is a much better striker than Michelle Waterson, who throws a bunch of volume but doesn't necessarily hit her target. Marina Rodriguez is a lot more accurate. Michelle Waterson Gomez has the edge in wrestling. She will go for takedowns. She might be able to get Marina Rodriguez down. I don't think it'll be for very long. I think Rodriguez wins an easy decision this one. I don't really want to speak on it much more because there really isn't much to say. I mean, if you think Michelle Waterson Gomez can hold Marina Rodriguez down better than she did in the last time they fought, which Michelle Waterson Gomez has proven in her fights that she has not changed her approach. She has not added any new wrinkles to her game. She is the same Michelle Waterson Gomez. And the Marina Rodriguez, on the other hand, is the same Marina Rodriguez. The same holes in her game. She can't defend the takedown. You need to be a plus level grappler. You can beat her like a Carla Esparza or a Vina Jandarova. Those are the fighters that are going to beat Marina Rodriguez. Michelle Waterson Gomez does not have that type of grappling. She does have the edge in wrestling, but she's not going to be able to hold her down multiple rounds in this fight. And Rodriguez is going to do a lot more damage than Waterson Gomez does. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I mean, Michelle Waterson Gomez had this stupid interview that she did where she talked about asking the judges what they value, and she's like, I think they value face strikes a lot more than clinch control time, or like they don't know how hard it is to hold someone up against the fence. And I wanted to vomit. That was the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. It's a fight, of course they're going to value face punches to the face more than holding someone up against the cage. It's the most boring thing I've ever heard in my entire life, the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Just like, you should be cut from the UFC just for making a statement like that. Like, clearly you're not in there to fight. Clearly you're not in there to finish a fight. You're just in there to fence push and hope for a decision. GTFO, Michelle Waterson, you suck. Marina Rodriguez is winning this fight. She's minus 310. Favorite. Yeah, give me Marina Rodriguez all day. I don't have a play on her because it's a lot of juice, but still, that's my pick. Bryce Mitchell versus Dan Ige. Dan Ige, jack of all trades, master of none, but I'd say he's plus all around the board. Very solid guy. The guy that's constantly going to be hanging around the top 10 in the featherweight division. Always going to be a tough fight for you. Bryce Mitchell, elite level grappling. Striking's come along a little bit. Saw that in the Barboza fight, but he is takedown dependent. And when he gets you down, he is a MFer on the ground. He is good. You need a plus level grappler like Ilia Topuria, to really give him problems like it was the last time out for him. So, in this one, I mean, Dan Ige, he's a very big underdog in this fight. He's plus 170. Bryce Mitchell on the comeback, he's minus 205. And these guys started out at par, and a lot of money's coming on Bryce Mitchell. And there's a reason why a lot of money's coming on Bryce Mitchell. Why do the sharps love Bryce Mitchell so much? Well, it's easy. Dan Ige, you can look at his shining performances. You can look at the Nate Landwehr fight and say, oh my God, look at this guy box. You can look at the Damon Jackson fight and you can say, oh my God, look at this guy box and defend the takedowns. This is my guy. This is my golden goose. This is where I'm going to make my money. You need to go back and you need to look at the Korean Zombie fight, and you need to go back and you need to look at the Movsar Evloev fight. Those guys were able to take Dan Ige down and hold him down for extended periods of time in that fight. They were able to mix in their grappling, and it neutralized what Dan Ige could do on the feet. Dan Ige had no respect for Damon Jackson's takedown game, which is horrendous. Damon Jackson is a guy that when he gets you down or gets your back, he's deadly with jiu-jitsu, but he's one of those guys that's in between, doesn't know how to get the fight to the ground. Not a very good wrestler. Nate Landwehr is a guy who can get touched. He's wild. He's going to press the fight. He's going to be in your face, and he's going to look to break you late. But he's a guy like Dan Ige who has very crisp technical boxing, knows the openings, knows when to counter, is going to touch Nate Landwehr up. And that's what happened. So in this fight, I have to go with Bryce Mitchell. His wrestling is really the X factor in this one, and I don't think Dan Ige shored up that hole in his game at this point to be able to fend off the takedowns from Bryce Mitchell. I mean, the only person who's really been able to do it has been Ilia Topuria up until this point, and Ilia Topuria is knocking on the door of a title shot. At this point in time, just an absolute world beater, undefeated. So I'm going with Bryce Mitchell in this fight, but I can't play him. I missed the train on that one. Did not pull the trigger early enough, and we're not going to take a bad line at 2-1 on Bryce Mitchell. Just a lot of juice to play. Moving on, we got Rafael Fiziev facing off against Mateusz Gamrot. So really is another clash of styles in this one, right? There's a lot of clash of styles on this fight where it's like one person's looking to take down the other person's looking to keep it standing. This is your prototypical, sprawl and brawl striker. I wouldn't say brawl because he's a very technical Muay Thai striker. Rafael Fiziev. He's not going to be the kind of guy that just goes in there swinging wildly. But he is very much cut from that new type of fighter where very good takedown defense and just win the fight on the feet. Mateusz Gamrot, on the other hand, is a very high-level wrestler for a lightweight. Some of the scrambles were that he and Arman Tsarukyan ran through, and those are two of the best wrestlers at lightweight. Like, they are phenomenal at what they do. Like, it was just impressive to watch them go through each sequence and watch one guy try to best the other. Like, they just completely canceled each other out with the grappling in that fight. And it was just I don't say this often because I hate wrestling. I'll be honest with you. I like watching people get punched in the face, but it was a pleasure to watch that fight against Arman Tsarukyan with Mateusz Gamrot. That was an interesting one. Gamrot has been dropped, though, in every fight that he's been in. That's been, hasn't been one-sided. I mean, Beneil Dariush dropped him. Arman Tsarukyan dropped him, even though it wasn't called as a knockdown. And then, against even against Jalen Turner's last time out, he got dropped in that fight. So, I mean, he's been fighting through adversity in these fights, and that's definitely a positive. But in this fight, it can definitely be a negative for a Fiziev who, a knockdown loses you the round, and Fiziev has shown that he can go 5 rounds against a wrestler. You look at the RDA fight. Yeah, he started to wilt a little bit in the 4th, but he came back in the 5th and was able to get the knockout. And in the 1st through the 3rd, completely dominated that fight. RDA couldn't get him to the ground. They were at space. Fiziev hitting him with the kicks, mixing in the punches. He just throws with such power too. And that's the thing. When I think a fight's going to go to a decision, which I do think, I see this one going 5 rounds. The finishing equities with Fiziev in this one, unless Gamrot can get him down, control him, and submit him, which I don't see happening, I really do think Fiziev is the one that can get a finish. But I think Gamrot's too tough. But he throws and hits a lot harder than Gamrot does, right? So, and then you're looking at optics for a decision. You got to think what the judges are seeing. Think about what the judges are seeing, right? They're going to see Gamrot going in for takedowns. Fiziev's going to stuff the majority of them. I think this is going to be like a 20 to 22 takedown type of night, and Gamrot might get 2, maybe 3, and maybe one of them he can keep them down for a decent period of time, but the other 2, Fiziev's going to get right back to his feet. So you're going to see majority striking, in my opinion. That couldn't Mateusz could go out there and wrestle him, to death, but if they're standing, Fiziev's going to land so much more powerful shots than Mateusz Gamrot is. And the optics are just the judges are going to have to give him these rounds, right? So he's going to be banking rounds early. Say the 4th and the 5th come, Fiziev's gassed, he gets down. I don't think Gamrot has what it takes to submit him. I think Fiziev's going to be solid enough with his takedown defense and his submission defense to at least keep the fight extended. I just don't see how Gamrot can win rounds 1, 2, and 3. You look at the Beneil Dariush fight. Beneil Dariush isn't nearly the type of striker that Rafael Fiziev is. And he was able to keep the fight standing and win the fight on the feet against Mateusz Gamrot. Fiziev, switch stance, Muay Thai kicks, just ripping to the body, ripping to the legs. Just like you go back and you look at the Gurem fight, which was very close against Mateusz Gamrot, and I just don't see Fiziev being much stronger and a much better Muay Thai striker than Gurem Kutateladze is, how is Mateusz Gamrot going to win this fight? It's going to have to be late, and he's going to have to win at least 3 rounds if it's going to a decision. I don't see that happening. So I'm going with Rafael Fiziev in this fight. I think he's going to be able to sprawl, keep it on the feet, and then he's just going to work Gamrot with those kicks and those combinations and keep his distance and win a decision. So it's my pick. I don't have a play on it, though. Fiziev is minus 155, and money seems to be coming in on his side. Gamrot right around plus 130, plus 135. So that's the breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something new. As always, follow me on the socials at Bobby Bets Fights, Twitter, YouTube, BetMMA.tips. Let's go ahead and right the ship, say a little prayer, and hopefully we win some money this weekend. Bobby Bets Fights, out.